Hey, welcome to Creative Block. We're your host, Gene.
And V, we interview people in creative industries about their life, work, and hobbies while we do Little Jam.
We asked people on Twitter if they had specific topics they wanted us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
And today with us, we have Sofia Alexander. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Did I butcher your last name? How do you pronounce your last name?
Oh, Alexander.
Okay.
Nailed it. Nailed it in one.
Nice.
Good job,
I
V.
mean, my full name is a lot longer than that, but
Can you tell us that?
it's Sofia Eugenia Alexander Garcia.
Wow, that's awesome. That sounded so cool coming out. Well, Sophia, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, everyone asked me that question like at the beginning of something, and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
God, who am I?
Yeah,
Yes.
you have an existential crisis right in the beginning.
I get nervous. I am the creator and executive producer of Onyx Equinox, and let me see. I was a storyboard artist before then. Currently, I'm working at Marvel, and it's a lot of fun. What else? I'm originally from Mexico, Cancun, which is that little place that people tend to go to whenever they go on vacation.
I've been there.
Yeah, so that's me.
It's very pretty there. I actually ventured. I was there, resorting with my parents, but we did venture out into town, and it's very pretty. It's a very beautiful area. That's great. So tell us about how you got your start drawing and how you first got into animation.
Well, to begin with, I didn't go to college for animation. I actually went for sequential art, which is the fancy term for comic books.
Right.
Because I loved manga and anime, and I wanted to be like, oh man, I wanna draw my own manga and stuff. And I was like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and then graduated, and one of my friends asked me like, hey, can you help me on storyboards for my thesis of animation? And I said, sure, what's that? Because I didn't know what storyboards were. And so he explained to me. I got the general gist. And and I started storyboarding for him. And I realized, wow, this is awesome, because it's kind of like animation, but I don't have to finish the drawings like I do in comics, which is kind of awesome. And so that's how I kind of dipped my toesies into the pool of storyboarding. Let me see. I didn't break into the industry immediately. It actually took me a little bit, and let me see. It took me like 3 years to break in. I was living in Savannah, where I studied, and my wife and I, my girlfriend at the time, we realized, if we want to work in LA, we have to move there. It's more likely to get a job once you're in LA, once you have an address. And that's why, it's a good idea to, if you have a friend that lives in LA, put their address down when you're submitting for.
Oh, damn.
For
that's a good tip. That's really good.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that. Wait, why would you say it was? Because for me, my personal experience is I was able to start freelancing from abroad, and then finally they were like, okay, we'll apply for a visa for you. So I didn't go through that route of but why would you say for you, is it because studios just want you to start right away, and they need you to believe that you're in LA? Is that kind of the
Yeah. It's just, more convenient for studios. And and it's understandable. A lot of times they're like, oh no, this person had to go on sick leave or something, or just production start suddenly, and sometimes they just need more people for XY reason. So also, V, you're right. Like the whole visa process, like it kind of it involves a lot more work. So it's it makes studios just want to generally hire people who are readily available.
Yeah,
It's cheaper.
V,
too.
you're superhuman. That's how that worked out. I think that most
not
people do not
really.
get that kind of thing. Yeah, because I was told the same thing. It's like you have to
That's so
be there.
interesting. Yeah. Oh, did you, by the way, Sophia, did you study animation in the US? Like, where was the college you went to?
It's not a great college, and I don't like bringing it up because it was overpriced, and
Yeah.
they had favorites, and they did not foster like a very good environment for kids who were not like little star students. Like I was not.
Right.
I see. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of college that kind of work that way for some reason. It's
because I assume that like the better, if they see potential in somebody or perceived potential in somebody, they're gonna want them to be like promoting the school, and it's because it all comes back to just making a buck. Unfortunately, with colleges like that, which is not fair.
Yeah, and so like that's why I suggest to people who are animation hopefuls, like, hey, if you have a friend who is comfortable with you putting down their address, and they're ready to be like, hey, would it be okay if I crashed on your couch for a little bit while I find a place to stay? Like, please, like that's the easiest, most economical way to find a job somewhere where you currently cannot afford to just move there and job hunt, Yeah. I mean, I crashed at a friend's place for a month until we got our footing. And I've had, let me see, like 4 people crash on my couch for a couple months.
You got to pay it forward, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And let me see, 3 of them were people I hired on Onyx. Yeah, I was like, I mean, one of them was Mona Robot on Twitter. Monica Robles, she was one of our background designers, concept artist for all the Maya technology, and oh gosh, she's awesome. But yeah, I had to basically beg the studio, like, please, I really would like her to be on this production because it would give the show a more authentic look and like different. It would stand out.
Right.
And the reason behind that thought, sorry, it's that Mona lives in Chiapas, and in Chiapas, Mexico, by the way, it's a state in Mexico. There's a lot of like temples around the area. It's heavily Maya populated. Like her whole thing is like the the iconography of Maya, like art. So she's very well versed on like what it looks like, what it means. She has an incredible assortment of books and knowledge on the subject. So I was like, I really would like someone who knows about the culture, who is familiar with it and the look of it, to come help me basically teach my art director, my supervisor about like how things should look. Because, me growing up in Mexico and learning about these things in school and stuff, like it's the basics. Like it doesn't make me a professional. I was just really curious about my own culture, or rather my cultural heritage, and it was hard as a subject to be introduced as animation when people the most they know about the Mesoamerican people was Apocalypto and Mayas, the Mayas, the Mayans and the Aztecs,
Yeah.
But there's so many more. So I really wanted it to be special. like any creator,
Sure.
making something. They want to make something beautiful and special, and that was Onyx for me. So, the studio gave in. They're like, okay, all right, fine. And so Mona's like, I have nowhere to go. I'm like, worry not. If you are comfortable with crashing over at my place, like, please feel free to. And she did. And funny thing is that one of my neighbors eventually was like, hey, I'm looking for a roommate. And I was like, well,
Oh yeah.
do I have news for you? So she stayed over. She lived 3 apartments down from mine.
That's great.
And the sad thing is that I was so busy all the time that I never really saw her outside of work.
Yeah, that's how it is, right? When you start show running, it gets so busy.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Goodbye to friendships.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I do want to ask you a little bit about how was your journey like from your first job until getting to run Onyx Equinox? Like what was it like getting your first job, and kind of how were you pitching before you got your first gig? Were you pitching while you were working your first couple of gigs? How was that timeline like?
After I moved in and crashed my friend's place, we kind of started looking for general work, Barnes and Noble, Navy, that kind of stuff. It's very strange how people get into this industry. Some of them get right after college, they graduate with a job, especially if you go like to certain schools, and the visibility for students is larger in some colleges than others. And for those who don't, we end up like trying to, like, if you know someone who knows someone, within like production or something, and you might start as, something other than the job you wanted, which is perfectly fine and normal. My journey was, after I moved here, we didn't have a job like in the industry at the time, so it was a little hard at first. I applied for a bunch of like revisionist positions because I didn't feel ready to be a full-on storyboard artist. My college only offered one course on storyboarding, and this is when I wanted to go back into college to kind of delve more into the animation side of it and like storyboarding, but they only offered one course, and so I thought maybe it was gonna be a waste of money. So I applied to be a storyboard revisionist in places, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, whoever was looking. And it was a little frustrating because you don't hear back for a while, so you're holding your breath, hoping. I did manage to get far into the hiring process where they were like, oh, we're looking at one other person in you, and I was like, great. And you feel so ready to start, and you're like, okay, come on, maybe this is it. And I got disappointed a couple of times where I actually went, maybe I'm not fit for this, which is something everyone goes through. But the truth is that it's not, there is a certain amount of talent that you need. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of times, even no matter how good you are and how big you have like a fan base online or like connections or whatever, if your style specifically does not fit the show, you might not end up getting it, and that's fine,
That's very true.
It's nothing about your, It's tough because everyone wants to take that personally, but like 99.9% of the time, it's just like you probably would have had a miserable time on that show as well. You know, like because I've been in a position where I got hired for something and I didn't feel like I was going to be a good fit, but I was like, this is a good job, but I should probably take it. And then I was like, oh, I am not a good fit for this. And it's like I was struggling, you know. So, but it happens.
Yeah. And so, you know, I got disappointed a couple of times, and it was about to mark a full year since we've been in LA, and I thought, oh no. And, you know, I'm trying to be more open about this. I haven't mentioned it a lot, but I think it's fair for those who also suffer of, like, you know, gosh, what's the term?
Imposter syndrome, maybe?
No. Depression. So like,
yes.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You know, I'm trying to be a little bit like remove the stigma of talking about it. Even though like I come from a culture that's very much like, oh, you know, it's not, you don't have anything. You're just, you know.
Yep. Yeah. I totally. Yeah, I relate to that.
I feel like a lot of overseas cultures are like that because I'm from Ukraine originally too, and like that's just like nobody wants to admit that mental illness is a thing. Yeah, you know, I think America's actually destigmatizing a lot of that stuff.
I agree. I think it's because it's kind of like, or at least in France, it's like, well, if you're smiling, you're not depressed.
Exactly. Exactly.
If you're able to get out of bed, you're not depressed. So
it's like, oh, see, you're fine now. You're like, no.
Yeah.
It's like a faucet that, you know, you're trying to fix, and it just continues dripping. You know, you can try to fix it, and maybe it'll stop the drip to a certain point, so it doesn't fill the glass as fast. But
a nice
it's
metaphor.
Still, yeah.
That's great.
Or like one of my, well, not favorites, but the one that kind of hits the most for me is when someone told me that it's kind of like being in the ocean, like a choppy ocean, and you're floating, right? And you're kind of moving through the motion of the waves, but sometimes there's a big wave about to crash on you. And when you're depressed, you learn to see those waves coming, or you learn to see the first signs before you go, oh, okay, I'm about to be in a bad place.
Sure.
And that's okay. You know, you don't, it's not giving in. It's allowing yourself to process the moments that you need in order to be okay later. So I was going a lot through that. I had a very traumatizing experience that is it's still a little personal, and even though it happened like 10 years ago, it's still fresh in a way because it's still something that I'm dealing with currently,
right?
But it you know, coming out was not happy for me. And so I dealt with a lot of traumatizing experiences from that, and that one day I would like to share, but I still don't feel ready.
But
time. Totally.
So but I think it's still fair mentioning it because, you know, a lot of people hope, oh, my parents may understand, then maybe they don't, or like it's not always a happy ending, but it does get better.
Sure.
So so I keep going in tangents, but
no, but I think we, you know, I'm sure we really, V as well, we appreciate you opening up about that kind of stuff because like you're right, there is a stigma and people don't want to talk about it, and I think I know that there are people out there who will hear it, who are going through similar things, and it's great to be it's great to feel seen and be heard and have a similar, you know, thing that you've gone through. So we appreciate that you've been upfront about it.
Yeah. This is very important also, just because we've had, you know, we do want to have a lot of different stories and highlight that all of the experiences are like valid and real and do exist in this industry, you know? So I think this is really great. Thank you so much.
And, you know, so the problem with, my depression is I didn't know how to manage it. So getting, the industry blows of, not getting the job, it's like hits harder.
Yeah.
Or not harder, because, it's everyone goes through it differently. But it felt hard for me. So my wife would be like, no, don't give in, don't give up, and like, you keep going. So but yeah, it got to the point where we didn't really have money to eat with. We couldn't afford groceries, so like we were eating just pasta with tomato sauce for the longest time. I remember, and we still talk about this because it's good to remember how far you've come, but
Absolutely.
I remember being at the grocery store to get pasta, and I saw an apple, and I was like, oh my god, I really want an apple. And I remember asking my wife, like, hey, do you think we can afford an apple? And she goes, I'll buy you two. I was like, yes.
Oh, my heart.
Yeah, it got bad to the point where two of our friends, one of them we crashed with, they surprised us one evening, and they just brought us groceries. And I remember I cried because, you don't expect this kind of goodness from others. Like, yes, there are friends and we love them and everything, but it's a big responsibility. You can't just, support someone. You cannot expect others to support you the way you expect family members to. And since I went through a very traumatic family experience, I didn't expect it from anyone that wasn't my girlfriend.
Right.
So seeing that made me feel very loved. So yeah, shout out to my friends, wonderful people. So things were dark.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
But so the people that we moved in with, they were one of my ex-professors. One of them was his sister and her wife, and so I would babysit for them all the time because they had a wonderful little girl and she was wonderful. Anyway, one of them was like, hey, I know someone who works at Cartoon Network. And I was like, hey, that's awesome. But someone always tells you like, oh, I know someone who works at the store of blah, blah, blah. And you think, okay, it's probably one of those. But you know what? It's, I'll take it,
Yeah.
She ended up being a director on Powerpuff Girls.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh, cool. Yeah. And by then, I had been able to land a job at Disney Imagineering. I forgot to mention. Technically, my first job in the industry was to help reconceptualize the Pirates of the Caribbean ride.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I don't think we've had anybody that worked as an Imagineer. That's
really cool. Oh, I feel special.
Yeah. I think you're our first. Tell us about that, because that's a unique thing for sure.
Okay. So I knew someone from school who is now currently an Imagineer, and one of my professors was like, hey, remember so and so? And I was like, yeah. It's like, well, they're in LA right now, here's their contact info. And I didn't really know her well enough to feel comfortable to approach her, but you know what, the worst that can happen is, oh, I can't help you, or like, no, sorry, or
yeah, sure,
So I approached her, and she was like, yeah, man, I'll put your name down, see if we have anything that we might need help with. And I was like, awesome. And it was a freelance job, so it wasn't something stable, but it was something. And the typical artist doing commissions online and stuff, so like, this feels big. And it was like a nice paycheck, all things considered. So I was contacted, and they were like, hey, we need help doing this. And I was like, holy crap, that's huge. So I almost said no, because I was so scared. But I ended up saying yes, and they gave me the art design of, gosh, I don't remember the name of the character design for like Sleeping Beauty, but they designed Aurora basically, and they were like the original designers of the characters in Pirates of the Caribbean, like the concept.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, so they gave me the art style kind of samples, so I kind of followed that as best as I could. And yeah, I helped reimagine the stage where the women are being sold, you know? Because, you know, human trafficking, maybe it's not good. Yeah, so we, well, not we. Well, yes, we, because it's not just me. It's a big team. So I helped with that, and I helped, like, do the first designs of the lady in red. I think they call her Red for short, which is like basically the sexy lady that's being sold, and we imagined her as a pirate. And so I did some of like the first drawings, like the first drafts of her and her dress and like what she would look like and some of the expressions. And I feel like I should share these things like on my art, like on
Maybe
my Instagram and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's cool to
I'm
see.
like so curious. Yeah, I've never seen art of that, like all the concepts that go into making one of those. That's really cool.
It was fun. And kind of surreal because I was like, oh yeah, I guess there's people who do this. Yeah. So that was fun. And I would like to say that the general idea of what I helped with came through, and so it was really exciting, like going to see it. It was really exciting to going to see it in person, being like, oh my god, I helped with this is awesome. I never met the other people who helped, the other artists, so if you're listening to this, you're awesome. But yeah, so yes, my landlady was like, hey, you know, we know this person, so we contacted them, and you know, they were like, hey, yeah, we need help immediately on Powerpuff Girls, and we need help doing revisions, and the revisions were done traditionally.
Interesting.
Yeah, they gave us like, god.
Oh, did you meet Megan Fisher?
I think Fitzy,
because I think she was also doing revisions. She was talking about doing revisions on paper as well for Powerpuff Girls. And did you have to use like the little like not knife, but what is it called, like you had to draw on Post-it notes and like sometimes like kind of like cut and like paste and stuff. This is so crazy.
No, I never met her.
Ah, man. Yeah, maybe it was like at a because the show was like a couple seasons long, right? It was like 3 seasons, so maybe you guys were on different seasons.
Maybe. Also, I never saw anyone from the team because my wife and I, we both got the job. The only person we knew was Andy Kung. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Andy. But he was the full-time storyboard revisionist. And he was the only one we met besides the art director, not the art director, the storyboard director, the episodic director. And so I didn't really get a chance to make many friends. But, you know, it was something, and we were very grateful for it. The job started at 5 p.m., and we were supposed to be done with the revisions by 8 a.m. the next morning. And so our schedule was very weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wait, they were like working you like overnight?
I mean, if that was necessary. They never said it.
Oh my gosh.
But
that's so crazy.
Sometimes, and most of the time rather, it was a job that took us well into 3 a.m. or 4 a.m.
Oh, fuck.
That's so crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
You guys were like the emergency team.
Yes. Basically, all the work that Andy couldn't get done, which is understandably so, because I think he was the only storyboard revisionist.
Wow.
Period. Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. So
holy moly. How long did you do this for?
10 months.
10 months? Okay.
Wow. Yeah, and then Andy he was the one who asked, like, hey, I have a friend who is, sorry, let me say this again. Andy approached my wife and I, Anna Lencioni, and was like, hey, would you like me to put you down on a list of names for me to recommend to people? And I was like, hell yeah, like, please. And that's how we got in touch with Hasbro people and DreamWorks people. Actually, both my wife and I were contacted by both Hasbro and DreamWorks. And we thought,
cool.
Well, let's divide and conquer. You go to DreamWorks and I'll go to Hasbro, because if for some reason the production ends early or is canceled or something happens, both of us cannot be unemployed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we decided to do that, even though we really wanted to work together. And so, my first full-time job as a revisionist was over on Stretch Armstrong and the Flex Fighters over at Hasbro. And I was bumped up to, Journeyman? Is that what it's called?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
After like 3 months of being there. And then I was bumped into being a full-time storyboard artist within like the first 6 months, I want to say. So I was able to like climb the ladder pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah, sounds like it. Yeah.
And
That's
so, I stayed there for over a year. And then, my executive producer and the supervising director were like, hey, you're really good. And I think you have we believe you have what it takes to be greater, and we want to foster this growth, because they were very inclusive people. They wanted to include more diversity before most studios started doing it, really. Or at least vocal about it and showing off like, oh yeah, we're so inclusive, it's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they were actually already doing it. And so they were like, we have some contacts over on Gotham Group, which is artist management group, and the only way you can get in is by being recommended, apparently. So they put my name down, and that's how I met my current manager. So the reason why I felt the need for a manager is because I wanted to be a director and a showrunner, and most of the time managers are looking for that. They're looking for people who want to be directors and above. Because, they get a cut of the check. So they want people who make, more money, understandably so. Like, that's the business. And, so he's the one that found me the Invader Zim test. And part of me was like, how? Like, because backstory is, and Jonan knows this. Jonan is for those who don't know, it's the creator and showrunner of Invader Zim.
Yeah, he's been on the show.
Oh, hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah, that was a great episode.
Yeah, he's awesome. Backstory for me on Invader Zim is that growing up, I didn't like it. I thought,
how dare you?
Gosh. I'm sorry.
So fun. That's so funny.
And
This interview is canceled.
I'm sorry. And again,
No,
Jonan knows this. He knows this.
Jonan
We laugh
probably
about
was like,
this.
"You don't like my show? Great, please come work on my show."
That's
basically.
so funny.
But I mean, I told him this much later. I didn't go like, I hate your show.
In the
know,
interview,
it's no.
I don't like this.
It would actually suck working here. It's
Yeah.
So I got the test and I thought, man, I never liked this show growing up. I thought it was kind of depressing and ugly. But my wife was a huge fan, is a huge fan. And she goes, please, just please do it for me. And besides, I didn't want to pass up on a job opportunity. A job is a job. And as a storyboard artist, you're supposed to be versatile in your art style, right? And I thought, well, I never want to be unemployed again. I know what it's like to be hungry. And as much as I was like, you know what? Yes, okay, let's try it out. There were other jobs that I was applying for, but this was the one that kind of called my attention a little bit because I was like, okay, maybe let's try it out. So I watched a couple of the episodes now as a grown, beautiful woman, you know? And I remember thinking, oh my God, I was right. This is depressing and ugly.
No, it's depressing. Yeah.
And then I thought, I get it now. I get it. I love this. This is great.
Ah, you came around. Okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, because I became a bitter person. No, I mean, I'm only half joking. It's just that, you know, it feels genuine in how crude it can be.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, Jonan knows this. It's not like I'm, you know, talking shit behind his back or anything. But, yeah, so I got the test. I did it. I had a lot of fun. And I thought, well, you know, here we go. We'll see. I didn't expect to get it. So when they were like, hey, come on over, we want to interview, I was like, oh my God, crazy. And then, you know, I think I met them once. I cannot remember. And I had the job like within the month. So that was interesting. I didn't know who Jonan was or what he looked like. And so I was like, who is this? And I don't want to ask because, you know, he's well known. So I didn't want to be like, I don't know who you are, you know. So I just kind of went about my first couple of days not knowing. And I remember being like, who is this guy who's like taking over the meetings? And I was like, wait. So yeah,
so funny.
I don't think I had as much fun in any production as I had on Zim. It was so much fun.
That's all I've ever heard. Like, it just seems like such a great crew. I mean, I'm friends with like 80% of that crew. It's a good energy. Like, it's just yeah. It seems like it was a really fun time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys were like, it's so funny because I remember being on Loud House when you guys were around, and I hung out with you guys like maybe once, and I was like, man, these are the cool kids. And it's so funny because I heard from another crew that the Loud House crew was considered to be the cool kids. So I'm like, none of this makes any sense. Why are we all,
you know?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, because I didn't really leave my little floor with the Zim crew because I had a lot of fun with them, so I didn't feel the need of like making more friends. I don't mean that as in like I'm too good for them.
Yeah.
But
right.
You know, it's just that I was like, I found my family. You know.
Yeah.
And also I'm shy, so yeah. It was an incredible experience. And I had, gosh, it's one of my favorite productions to have worked on. Jonan is a very genuine person. And the people who worked there, I felt very honored to be working with them. They're incredible artists. Yeah. So after that, I received an email from Cartoon Network saying, hey, you know, we would like you to, you know, apply or like, you know, come for an interview. This is, you know, the kind of short of Infinity Train. Please watch it. And if I remember correctly, I hope, Owen Dennis, the showrunner of Infinity Train, said that he was interested in me because he saw my Invader Zim fan art that you know, the doodles that I have done while in production. And he thought, well, if she can draw Zim and she has all the other styles, then she could draw my characters, right? And that's why when people tell you don't draw fan art, no, do draw fan art. Try.
Very
you know?
true.
It's because a lot of times, you know, that's how people find you, you know, on top of being able to be versatile in your style. So, yeah, I went to the interview and I remember saying something that I was like, oh no, that came out really arrogant, because I was like, okay, well, when do you want me to start? And I was like, they never even said. That was my first interview. And I was like, oh no, that sounded like, for me, I was just wondering, like, hey, when would you like me to start? As in, like, when is production starting?
Yeah. I know what you mean exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
those like moments when you're like, this came out completely wrong, and now they have a completely skewed image of me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but
But you know what? Owen turned to Maddie, and they went, well, can you start on this date? And I was like, oh, well, shit. Yeah. And I walked out of there with a job.
Nice. I love this.
Yeah. No, it was very nerve-wracking for like the whole maybe 20 seconds. They turned to each other. I was like, oh no, I just burnt myself. Oh no. Yeah. So after that, I think the jobs, I had like a little bit of time between jobs. I think it was like 4 weeks. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is so long. I've never, this is nerve-wracking. But then I realized this is pretty normal. And so now I wish I had this long between jobs.
Right.
Because it helps, Yeah. After working on Infinity Train, which was beautiful, because I initially was like, oh, I've never heard of this. I watched the pilot and I found it very interesting. Like, it felt very have you guys watched The Goonies?
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like the 90s, late 80s, kids going on adventures, but
Yes.
bad things still happen, and like, you don't talk down to kids, they get it. So I found it very interesting. I found Tulip very interesting, and I was like, I would love working here. And I didn't apply for something else, I mean, I did walk out with a job, but I remember thinking, oh my God, I love this. And so I stayed there the entire first season, and I storyboarded for like the first half of the second season. And that was, while I was on Zim, the last leg of Zim, my manager was like, all right, it's time to apply. Let's pitch your show. Because and rewinding, when I met him back on my Hasbro days, the way that I interviewed for my, to be part of Gotham Group, was that you take your portfolio and basically you're applying to have a manager.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the manager will decide, oh yeah, you kind of align with what we want and what we're looking for.
Interesting. And
so one of his after asking me, what would you like to do, what's your goal, how far would you like to go, is because it's perfectly normal to want to stay a revisionist, a storyboard artist, a director, like, that those are all very respectable jobs. So when I say, oh, what other higher positions, it just means like within the production. I don't mean that as like better jobs,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So yeah. Also, another question that he asked was, would you like to be a showrunner or like pitch or an executive, what? And I said, yeah, I would love to showrun. He's like, cool, well, what do you have? And I had a couple ideas. My wife, I remember her telling me, please pitch him Onyx. Because I wasn't gonna. I didn't want to. I didn't feel confident that someone would want it, because it was very, like, I had not seen anything like it in animation, in both anime or Western, or at least that I was aware of, or that I had been done to that degree by a Mexican, or by, And so I told her, well, no one would want it. There's a reason there's nothing like it. And she goes, no, like, maybe it's because no one has pitched it. So pitch it. And she denies it, but she was like, you know, I would be very angry with you if you didn't pitch it. I'm like, okay, fine. So I show him my other pitches, and he goes like, oh, okay, well, you know, there's something kind of similar to this. And by similar, I mean, if there's a girl that goes on an adventure and there's kind of sort of scary stories, oh, that's Owl House. Even though it's nothing similar, it's like that's the general of what studios do, really. Even if it's not like, oh, 2 girls and going on an adventure, oh, that's another one we already have, even though the genre might be completely different.
Yes.
So I remember him going, well, what else do you have? Do you have something else? And I remember like hearing my wife's voice like, pitch it. I'm like, okay. So I pull it out and I'm like, all right. So I kind of like, you know, pitch it a little not enthusiastically, but then as I got into it, I started remembering why I loved it, and I, you know, and I just went really into it. And he goes, I love it, this is great. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, this is so different, and you know, there's nothing like it right now, and I haven't seen, you know. So I was like, oh my god, it worked. Yeah. So we started working on the pitch from then. And by working on the pitch, I mean, I already had the material, but he's like, okay, now let's put together a pitch Bible for an animation studio. Because what I had was really for comic books, because initially I wanted it to be a comic book. I pitched it after I graduated, and I had Tokyo Pop Germany interested in it. I actually went through the process. They gave me a contract, but I didn't sign it because something told me I could do something else with this. So I said no to my dream job, which was weird. Yeah. So I pitched Onyx to him. He loved it. And I thought, oh my god, is this really where it starts? Because I remember telling my wife, you know, I don't know how it'll happen. But one day I'll be a showrunner. One day I'll showrun Onyx. Yeah. I said, I don't know how, but it's going to happen. Like, no doubt. I had no doubt in my heart that it was going to happen. And this was back in 2011 when I said this, you know? So it's, I remember we were walking to the grocery store back then, and like, it was such a moment of clarity for me. And so, yeah, when it was happening, I was like, holy crap. This is where it starts. Great. And whatever happens, you know, at least I tried.
Right.
So, yeah, I start working over the pitch. Start going over the pitch with him. We start fleshing out the characters more. And by that, I mean, again, what are the things that you need to mention to the executives in order to catch their attention? Right? So, after we had that ready, I was just starting on Infinity Train when I started pitching my story. And I pitched to Frederator and Crunchyroll. I remember not wanting to pitch to Netflix because I thought, well, I'm nobody in the industry. And I feel like my show would get drowned out by all the material that's already there. So I didn't even want to pitch to Netflix. And which ended up being good because around the same time that I was pitching, Jorge was pitching his story. It worked out for the both of us.
Good, yeah, it did.
I mean, I feel like they would have said yes to him before they would have said yes to me. I mean, it's Jorge, right?
Yeah. It is Jorge.
Which, by the way, I adore Jorge.
He's amazing.
Great.
He's also been on the show.
Yeah, his interviews really is one of my favorites.
So good. Yeah, he's such a good storyteller.
Yeah.
So, both Frederator and Crunchyroll wanted the story. And the way I pitched, was after practicing with my manager over and over and over, he's like, okay, you're ready. So I pitched to Frederator first, and they like immediately were like, yeah, we want to hear more. We want you to come back. And so he was like, wait, don't say yes. We should option it to other places. Like, don't rush. And I was like, but what are you talking about? They want it now. So it's like, you know, as like a fresh person in the industry, be like, but my dream is like, it's right there. I could just take it, you know? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I waited, and I had a general meeting with a Crunchyroll development executive, Marissa Balkas, who I adore. Marissa, I adore you. Mm-hmm. It was just a general meeting. I wasn't even supposed to pitch. It was kind of a, hi, I'm Sofia. Oh. This is my whole deal. I would like to do this, whatever. Just to get to know executives in the industry. Like, that's what general meetings are for. And I remember after, you know, it was almost, our meeting was almost over. It was like an hour-long meeting. And I remember we hit it off about, like, you know, when she was like, oh, tell me more about Mexico, like, you know, the pyramids and stuff. You mentioned it. I was like, well, you know, and she was like, I love Mesoamerican like history and culture. It's so fascinating to me. And she started showing me pictures of when she was young, of like doing dioramas of like the pyramids. So she really loved it. I was like,
That's great. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's serendipitous.
And I was like, you know what? I was like, hey, I have a story. Interesting enough. And she's like, really? I was like, well, I have it right here. And I brought out my iPad. Which always be ready. Always. You never know when opportunity will strike. Yeah. Yep. And so I was like, the worst thing that can happen is she goes, oh, not right now. Let's have another meeting for that. She was like, yeah, we have 10 more minutes. I'm like, cool. I'm ready for this.
Nice.
You know, so I pitched it to her very quickly. And she's like, you know what? We're already kind of in the process of signing with another person for they had like 4 shows that were running, 2 in Japan and 2 in the US. One of them was High Guardian Spice. And so, she went, you know, we're already in the process, but you know what? I really like this. I feel like it's very unique. And by the way, in the process, I don't think that we're about to sign, you know, like that would be kind of sad, you know, like, oh no, it's like knocked someone off the show running opportunity. But I mean, I truly don't know how far into the process or who they are. But basically, she was like, I'm going to talk to the head of studio. Let me show her this, and let's meet again. Well, sure enough, I met with the head of studio 2 months later. I had more done for the pitch Bible. And she goes, great. I love it. Well, we want you to go to, I don't know, San Francisco? San Diego? Yes, San Diego, where our headquarters is, our Crunchyroll headquarters is, and we want you to pitch it to basically like the honchos of Crunchyroll. And so I went over and I was like, oh my gosh. And by then Marissa had helped me kind of like make a PowerPoint presentation basically of Onyx, telling them about my background, why this is personal to me, why I'm the right fit to tell this specific story. Not be the person that tells Mesoamerican stuff, but just this specific story. Because this story is very, well, it has very personal elements. Sure. That's the story I know, right? Which I will go into in a bit, if you're interested. But yeah, they really liked it. And soon enough, I was signing contracts. And this was while I was on Infinity Train on the 2nd season. And they said, hey, you know, right now we need help on High Guardian Spice. You know, could you help us doing some storyboards? And, you know, in the meantime, you get to know what our process is like. And I was like, that's genius. That's perfect. So I go over to High Guardian Spice and thank, the Infinity Train people. Because I didn't want to leave in the middle of the season, but I also needed to leave in order to learn the ropes of how Crunchyroll worked in order for me to be a better showrunner. Which, by the way, nothing really prepares you to be a showrunner unless you do directing and supervising, which I had not done.
Yeah.
Even that probably doesn't. Even that probably is not even close to the level of work.
It's definitely not the level. It does help, though.
It does.
I think, to be in leadership positions, because
Yes.
There are moments, like for me as a director, where like you get a million notes and you have just 2 days to do them, or like like just things like that, where it's like it feels like you're navigating a ship and everything is great, and it's just like the sea is calm today, and all of a sudden a huge storm hits you, and you have to make sure nobody dies.
Yes, you have to take care of your team.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
I used to have this like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I used to have this naive thinking of like, in my early to mid 20s that I could run a show if it landed in my lap, and like maybe I'd figure it out, maybe. But I think that the crew probably would have suffered to some degree. Like there was a lot of things that I just didn't know about leadership and management, like project management, and it's politics. Like there's so many different factors.
Yeah.
And now like
politics, that's
politics
a big
are
one.
huge, and nobody. Yeah. People that are talking about pitching shows and getting into show running, they don't even fathom how much of that is like you have to be kind of ruthless. You have to be kind, but also ruthless. You have to be empathetic, but also like logistic. Like there's so many things. And now that I'm a manager right now, and it's like, man, there's a lot of stuff that I just never even knew was a thing you have to know. Like I didn't know what I didn't know. So if you can get that kind of experience, fucking get it, because like you would not be able to be a successful showrunner if you
absolutely
don't have leadership.
And that's exactly what I was gonna go into. It's perfectly, you put it perfectly. I wish I had the experience. I had more storyboarding experience and that I had director experience and supervising experience, because you said it, like it makes you a better leader. It teaches you empathy towards those who will help you through the process. Not to say that I wasn't empathetic, because actually one of the first things I did while on High Guardian, I was like, I'm going to talk to the revisionist. I'm going to talk to the board artist. I'm going to talk to get a feel of, are they happy here? What's the process like? Right. Because a lot of people were green right out of college. They didn't know any better, So I'm not going to generalize. There's good people at Crunchyroll. But there's also people that are willing to take advantage of people who don't know, and they're told that they should feel grateful.
Yeah, that's disappointing.
I think it's also like more common than we think. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's not just. I think every studio has a little bit of that going on. Yeah,
absolutely. So I got them all. I wrangled them all. And I was like, can we talk? And by then I knew enough about the industry, and thanks to my manager as well, because he knew the rate that I should be paid for based on my experience, etc. So I was like, hey, how many hours do you guys work? Do you feel comfortable telling me how much you get paid? Because that's an important one. Talk to your peers about your experience. Talk to them about your pay. Because the reason why a lot of people don't get paid well is because they don't know any better. They don't know what to ask for.
Yep.
So that kind of prepared me for the kind of studio that I was going to work for, but not enough. And the team that I work with, they really loved the show. Like they put their heart and souls into it, which was kind of painful to watch, because the schedule and the budget did not reflect what at a studio how it should be budgeted and scheduled. And a lot of them want, like, one of my editors, Don, I went back to the studio like around 11 because I went back home to eat and, you know, do what I needed to do before I headed back to just kind of finish some stuff. And I saw my editor there. And I was like, what are you doing here? He goes, well, I gotta finish this. It's due tomorrow. I was like, no, go home. He's like, but we're not gonna, I asked for more time. They're not giving it to me. And I thought, you know, oh, did you talk to this one person? Did you talk to this one person? It's like, yeah, they said no. And this is not on production, by the way. This is on someone much higher.
Yes.
And a lot of times production, their hands are tied, you know?
Yes.
So I was shocked. I was like, no, like, you have, this is a lot of work. You're not going to be done until 6 a.m. at least. And he's like, yeah, but I want this to be done right. And I remember I almost started crying because I'm exhausted. And I'm seeing people, good people who love what they do, who believe in a project, putting their personal lives and even their health on the line for something that they believe in. And that's the problem with studios. They take advantage of that love and passion and burn people out. And so I remember telling him, I don't want you to do this. I don't want to build my dream on the backs of others. But a lot of times we were given no choice. So when some of my board artists are like, oh, they offered me a job here, I'm like, go. You should go. I was well aware of how difficult the show was. So I was very thankful for those who stayed.
And it's a beautiful show too. Like the level of quality you achieved is incredible. It's really incredible. It's a miracle it got done. It truly is. It's a miracle any show gets done. I mean, the amount of people that work together, that have to communicate the budget, the schedule, everything. There's so many things that go into it that people don't know about. And it's a miracle that any show gets made. But this show, I'm impressed. So I wish I knew what I know now and what I can demand and what I know I have the right to ask for in order to protect the people that work with me. Right.
The one thing I was able to do, and I feel like I would like to continue doing, if I am ever presented with that kind of scenario, which I hope I don't, is that Crunchyroll, I asked them if they were going to unionize by the time that my show started, because they were not union. And they said, yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. But they were dragging their feet on it. And I kept going, hey guys, we're about to start production. We need, people need basic health plans. They need, we can't. And so they were taking too long, and some artists were asking hey, I don't feel comfortable staying here if it's not, and it's understandable,
Yeah.
And that's another reason why a lot of artists didn't feel comfortable applying for this job. It's difficult to say, hey, do you want to come over and work on my very new, unknown, small studio, small budget show? And can you leave Disney for that? No. Yeah. So I'm very grateful for those who believed in it and stuck with me, and those who also left. Thank you, for your hard work. So they were dragging their feet. So I said, this is enough. This is not acceptable. So I had a big meeting with the head of studio, and I said, if you do not unionize by the time production actually starts, I'm walking.
Damn, Sophia, that's fucking huge. That's
wow.
That needs a round of applause from the internet. That's fucking amazing.
Right.
See, the thing is that I wasn't thinking when I said that.
Yeah, but
But
sometimes those are the best decisions, right?
Yeah, right.
but I remember thinking, like, this is not fair.
No,
I don't.
Mhm.
I
You have a good
mean,
heart.
there's-
That's
there's-
really meaningful.
You're gonna make me cry. Sophia. This is so beautiful. No, for real. It's like
I don't
you're
like
thinking-
bullies, man.
Yeah.
And that's what studios can be. They can be bullies.
Yes, they can.
Mhm.
I mean, again, there's good people out there that are doing their best. A lot of times it takes time. It's not an easy change. There's so many things that go into it. So I'm not saying, oh, all studios, all executives, and no, it's an unfair generalization. But yeah. So I remember walking out of that meeting and going, oh my God. And I immediately called my manager and I was like, so I said this.
What have I done?
And he goes, okay, okay. All right, hang on. Let me make some calls. And I was like, okay. And I remember calling my wife and be like, so, maybe I fucked up. Oh, sorry. I don't know if I can say bad words, but I was like,
Yeah, you're
No,
fine.
it's totally fine. Yeah, I forgot to say. It's totally fine.
okay. Well, then I'll say, maybe I fucked up. So, and she goes, it's okay, you know. You did what you thought was good in your heart. You know, I support you. I was like, okay, cool. And I remember going to some of my artists and being like, help. So this is the situation, because I had been talking to them about unionizing. I'm like, what can we do to make this process easier? And because I didn't know. I didn't know how. And I didn't know who to ask. So I would go to the Animation Guild. Because I was still part of the guild at the time, even though the production wasn't. So, and I knew that was going to run out pretty soon. So I was like, hey, what can I do in order to protect my artists during the process? You know? And they gave me some tips, but even then I was like, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing. And so in that moment of passion, I was like, oh, I'm going to walk out, you know? I didn't say it angrily. I was like, I'm sorry, but, you know, in a very business way, I was like, I don't feel right about this, and I'm going to walk out if, you know, this isn't a thing that happened. So, yeah, like in 2 days, you know, I was very nervous. I was like, oh my God, are they gonna like really kick me out, take my show? Which actually wasn't possible because my manager was able to work a pretty fair contract of, you know, they cannot make the show without me. So it would be a pretty big loss for both of us, you know? So yeah, we were able to unionize through.
That's amazing.
It was still through a third party, but I was able, you know. Not I. It wasn't also not a lot of people. I cannot take all the credit. My big mouth was a push.
Yeah, but
it wasn't everything.
It takes people in positions of power to make those kinds of things happen, and it's not easy to do. And you did it, and like that's amazing.
Right.
I think that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really great. I think because it's like because that's the thing. Everything that you said, it's like, you know, it asks for a lot of courage, and it's like a huge gamble, and it's like, who is, you know, it asks for a lot of bravery to make that gamble, right? To like take that risk, you know?
It really is a gamble.
Yeah,
it really is.
By the way, V, these drawings are beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
I feel guilty for not being able to draw, but
you're fine.
I really cannot multitask.
No, you're talking up a storm. That's
exactly.
that's more
Your
important.
story is way more interesting than the drawings right now.
That's not true. These are beautiful.
Yeah, that's a really amazing story. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
that's huge.
I love that. Yeah.
I had a lot of support, by the way, by some executives. So it wasn't just like, oh, they were the bad guys. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's great to know too, because
Yeah.
that means that like you were emboldened, like because if no one was on your side, I guess it would have been a lot harder to to make that decision.
Yeah.
But we've talked about it before, you know, the sort of butting of heads with execs and with artists, and we've had executives on the show, and they've talked about their side of it, and a lot of the time they're aware of all of the problems, and they would love to support the artists more, but then there's somebody that's even higher than them that doesn't want to, or that, you know, whatever. And
Tough
so
titties.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it sometimes just takes somebody to break that silence and to speak up, and then everyone falls in line, because nobody wants to be the one. Nobody wants to risk their neck a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
once somebody else, honestly, once somebody else becomes a scapegoat, everyone else is more likely to be like, oh, yep, me too. It's the like, I'm Spartacus thing, where it's like, if all it takes is one person to go, I'm Spartacus, and then everyone's like, I'm Spartacus, because you can't fire everybody and you can't get rid of everybody. But it takes that first person to be brave, and so that's amazing. Very, very, very brave of you.
Very cool.
We like to ask our guests about creative block and how it feels for them and how they deal with it.
Creative block. This is a hard one, because I suffered of creative block for about 5 years, like straight into the industry, because of a lot of personal things that were happening. I just didn't have the strength or like the bandwidth, not the strength, the bandwidth to work for hours drawing someone else's character, doing a lot of brain work, because it does take a lot of lot of mental it's crazy what we do, artists in general. And so I would go back home and all I want to do is nothing, just maybe play some video games. I just want to turn off my brain. But and I also realized I cannot draw on anything that's not Storyboard Pro. My brain somehow goes, Storyboard Pro, business time. We gotta go. Like something switched. I cannot, to this day, cannot for the life of me open up Procreate or Clip Studio Paint and go, I'm gonna draw something from scratch here. It stresses me out. There's so many tools, and like what I like about Storyboard Pro is that because it's where I work the loosest, I feel comfortable making mistakes. I feel comfortable undoing, and because I love using the vector pencil, so it's not pretty line work, it's pretty basic, so I feel more comfortable, less scared of having to erase something that's a line of textured pencil. It's too much, and I lost that creative block. Well, to begin with, I'm not counting the years that I was working on Onyx, because even then I just didn't have time to draw, period. There's no time. And the drawings, actually, a fun fact of the drawings at the very end of every episode, that was an idea I always had, but when it came to drawing it, I was so burnt out from showrunning and stressed and anxious that I was like, I don't know if I can draw this. I don't know if I know how to draw anymore. And so I actually canceled it. I was like, well, let's just do footage of the show. But literally the day before, I was like, no, I gotta do this. And all those drawings I did as quick as I could. Actually, my wife helped a lot with some of the concepts because I could just not think. So it happens to everyone. And then, I took a 4-month break after the show before going back into anything. I went into a couple writers' rooms, development. Currently, I'm helping develop a pilot for Disney, helping develop a couple things for AMC, or one thing for AMC, and I'm currently directing over at Marvel.
That is so cool. That is so amazing. I love this.
But during that break, or in between like bigger jobs, one of my friends, he started a D&D campaign. Well, it's actually not D&D, it's called Masks, which is more roleplay based, and less math, which is good because I can't. And it's based on superheroes, and so we created our characters, and I'm in love with the story, I'm in love with the characters, and that's how I started drawing. And actually, I don't post my art online anymore.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I keep it on between 6 of my friends. They're the only ones that know what I truly enjoy.
Wow.
Because after you become a showrunner, a director, a storyboard artist, even like people you're kind of like a rock star a little bit. People go, oh my gosh, you know, you're what I want to be, and like you have a bunch of followers, and social media is big, especially depending on like the kind of studio you're at, you know. So once you're kind of on that public figure spectrum, you have to be careful with how much you share about yourself, because then people think that they know you. And that's where that relationship, is that what it's called? Parasocial relationship becomes a thing. You know, it's very easy to fall into that. I mean, I've fallen into that. Where I watched, you know, Jenna Marbles for years, and I'm like, oh yeah, you feel like you know them, but you don't, you know? So I wanted to limit my personal life to just me being professional. That's why I hardly post on Instagram. I'm trying to be more active, because it's also not good to just not be active at all. So I did post a couple drawings here and there of my masked character, but he feels too personal to me. I almost don't want to share him at all. I have like hundreds of drawings of him that I do almost every day, and that I feel so good because I don't feel like I have to perform for the general public. This is mine.
Yeah.
You know, I remember thinking to myself, well, Onyx is no longer mine. This is the public's now.
Right. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And I feel that was a big part of getting over my creative block, is finding something I truly enjoyed, found precious to me. It could be fan art of some characters. It could be your own thing. Anything that gets you out of that funk is incredible. So I would say find something that truly makes you feel passionate about drawing again. Find the what makes, like, not the platform, the program or a piece of paper or whatever you need to feel comfortable into dipping your feet, just going back into that mindset, whatever that is, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And never forget that you're doing this because you wanted to create something. Sure, share it with the public. You feel confident, but more than anything, make something that makes you happy. Because the moment that you feel like you have to perform for the public, that's when it can go wrong. You know, unless you're actually dedicating it to your Patreon and, like, you know, it's actually part of the jobs that you chose. But I would say, don't lose yourself in the performance part of it. Do not lose yourself in the likes and the retweets and the, you know, the social media part of it. That kills you easily, because you compare yourself to other artists. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that I'm a showrunner, that I'm whatever I am. I still go through the same thing. I still go through imposter syndrome. I still, you know, it's nothing changes.
Yeah, that's
for sure.
so true.
We had some good questions on Twitter from @DinoLich, our mutual friend Moss.
Hey, Moss.
What was the research process like for Onyx Equinox? I know you had the story for a while before working with Crunchyroll. Was it something you've been researching over time, or was there any development time to deep dive into the culture and mythology?
It's definitely something that I had already done some research, not as in like depth as I went when I developed it, because this was more of a project for myself, so I didn't feel the need to like make it as accurate. But the more serious this got, where I was like, oh yeah, I'm actually going to make this. I want to make sure that it's Mesoamerican, especially like the cultures that I was going to represent. I had a fair representation. And yes, Onyx is still a fantasy, but I would say that 80% of what you see on Onyx is as accurate as we could make it, and as authentic to the culture, and trying to be respectful about it as well, and show even the parts that are not as pretty. But yeah, the amount of time we had to like really go into deep dive and kind of like give my team a crash course was 2 months, maybe. That's the development time we had before we went
That's not a lot.
into.
Wow, 2 months is very short. Yeah, it is very short. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. We did have a consultant. We had an archaeologist, anthropologist, and her field of expertise was Mesoamerican Mexico, specifically the Maya and the Aztec, Nahua people. Aztec is very broad, but yeah, it was a process, and that's why I mentioned Monica Robles, as being very important to the process, because I needed as many people who understood the history, the background, that it was personal to us. So yeah, we, even while writing, even during production, we were still doing research, especially because a lot of the backgrounds, a lot of things like, for example, the ball game play, Ulama or Tlachtli, depending on, I mean, there's many names for it, but we call it Ulama. That is a game that most people didn't know of, people watched The Road to El Dorado, but how do you storyboard something that you're not very familiar with? So I had to almost do a tiny crash course, give the artists the right reference, the videos for it. And because it's so easy to go online and go Aztec warrior, and one of the first things that you'll find is costumes, Halloween costumes. A lot of people would, tourists wouldn't be able to tell the difference between Purepecha, Maya, Totonac, Aztec, Zapotec. There's so many cultures that don't have the spotlight. And so for a lot of people, I was gonna be one of the first exposures. Onyx was gonna be one of the first exposures to a lot of these cultures. So yeah, the pressure was there to make sure that we had the correct resources and people to go to. Even the music, we use a combination of the instruments that would have been used, that we know of at least, because there's so many things that were lost to the Spanish invasion, because a lot of it was destroyed and burned, and it's very sad and unfortunate. Yeah, even the music for Ziania, who is Zapotec, she had a theme song basically where the lyrics were in Zapotec. The lullaby that plays at the end credits is in Nahua, right? Because Isel and Nelly are actually from Tenochtitlan, which is basically the capital of what we know as the Aztecs. It's all the language. Everything was as well thought of as we could, with the time that we had. And of course, in most productions, the storyboards caught up to the art, and then the board artist didn't have backgrounds. So I was like, oh god, you have to rush, because I cannot expect board artists to create concepts of something. But a lot of times they still did. And I hated that, because I was like, oh, that shouldn't be on you. This is already a crazy job in general. But yeah, that's what we did.
Cool.
That is very cool. Yeah.
From @BrandonCold1. Is it difficult to pitch a show with LGBTQ plus characters, and why?
Unfortunately, for the most part, yes.
Yeah.
Even though there's a lot of executives and people in leadership positions that are open to it, it also falls on the kind of storytelling that the studio is known for. They don't want to leave that branding that they have. And unfortunately, in more than a couple meetings, I have gotten executives in the room tell me, "Oh, we're a family studio."
Right.
When I
Okay.
ask, "How do you feel about having LGBT characters?"
From at Rolito Papel, were you inspired by any person to create the characters or their personality? And can you tell us a fun fact about the Onyx Equinox characters?
Let me see. A fun fact, right off the top of my head, is that Ziania originally, she's our resident badass warrior girl. Originally, she was designed as a boy. And that's, back during the days where I was like, oh, I like male characters more than female characters because I see myself more represented on male characters as being more real than female characters.
That's very relatable.
And yeah, especially in anime, like it feels like a male character is like, that's how women act too, Yeah, so it was during the time where I used to think that way, but then I realized, it's changing, and different kinds of women are being represented now, because there's nothing wrong in being the girly girl, the princess that needs saving. Like, we need all of that, but the problem is when it's only that. So I realized I wanted another girl character in the team, so I was like, why not Ziania? Like, literally her story did not change. It was still the same. All we did is I told myself, instead of he, just write she.
Right, yeah.
That's it. That's all it takes to write a female character.
You know what's crazy is like that I always go through that too, because I'm also programmed to always default to male. It's partially because I am male, but also because a lot of media is male centric, and I don't want to be a part of the problem, and so I actively try to include more female characters, and it really is that fucking easy. Like I will create a character that's male, and I go, nah, and I'll just like, what if it was female? And it usually makes for a far more interesting character that has not been seen in animation or whatever, and it's like, but those girls or those women exist, and so it's like, oh, and now this is more interesting than another trope or stereotype or whatever, and it's like, now this is something that's interesting. It really is that simple.
And that can be said about like, they, like non-binary.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, there's obviously some nuances that would be complicated to go into. So I
think once you make that switch in your head, then you can start to fill in those blanks with aspects of that character that would be, part of the female experience or the non-binary experience, and and that also makes the character more interesting. It's just like it adds depth that might not have been there if it's just like, this is the hero type, It's
and consulting and including,
of course,
the people that you are trying to represent is also important.
Absolutely. Well, awesome. This has been an amazing episode. Sophia, do you first of all, is there anything you want to plug or anything else you wanted to mention while you're on the show?
Yeah. I like telling, especially people who are trying to break into the industry, make friends.
Yeah.
Turn to your peers for advice, for support. Support each other. There are enough jobs in the industry. This is not a competition, because the person who works with you will one day be your boss, or you could be their boss, or both. You would be the boss of them, or leader, not boss. You would be in a leadership position one day, and they could be in a leadership position towards you in like another. Like, it changes so quickly. Pitching stories, help each other, give each other, share your thoughts, your stories, and like, again, support each other. I think that's the big one. I think we have strayed a little bit in animation as like, oh no, I have to be the one that does this because I want to be the first one.
Yeah.
And and that's the problem. Like, we're all here after the same thing. We all want to tell a beautiful story. We want to tell we want to share with the world something. You not getting your show made is not because the person next to you got it made. This is something that they wanted that you are currently not offering. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's not because they were better at pitching than you. It's because maybe the story wasn't what they were gelling with.
Yeah.
So it's not a competition. Same with storyboarding positions. Same with sometimes people are looking for certain things. So treat each other with respect. Make friends.
Yeah.
Don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
And yeah, man,
That's good advice.
No matter who you are on on your position, where the showrunner, director, treat each other with respect. We're all nerds, no matter who you are, what you've done. I honestly think we shouldn't care.
Yeah. Speak for yourself. I'm cool as hell. I'm not a nerd at all. No, that's not true. I'm the worst. What kind of plans do you have for your future? Either like career or maybe have some life goals?
I'm kind of taking it easy, but I would like to showrun again.
Sure.
But personally, I would like to go back to directing, supervising. Showrunning is hard, man.
Yeah.
So I would like to get a little bit more experience. Even though I've already showrun, I would like to take a step back, get more experience in positions where I would have benefited a lot from if I had before I go back to showrunning. And this is something that I told my manager specifically. I have an idea. Well, I have 3 ideas that 2 of them I'm working along my wife with. And one of them is actually Marvel related.
Oh, cool.
Which I'm very excited about. But again, I'm not trying to do it anytime soon.
Right.
Or who knows? Maybe it'll happen.
You never know. Never know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's the end of this creative block. Sofia, thanks for being our guest and sharing your story.
And thanks to your listeners. Follow us on Twitter. It's at Creative Block, creative without the vowels, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to our editor, Clements, for editing the podcast, and Malik for helping us produce the show.
If you love our show, then support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews as well as bonus episodes. Click the link in the description of this episode. I've been your host, Gene.
And I was V. Keep being creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.